Good morning, everyone. It's lovely to have you with us today. I'm wondering, who is your favourite superhero? Maybe you're a fan of Superman, the man of steel with his red cape and his ability to fly, who stands up for truth and justice. Or maybe you like Spider-Man, who protects people, has super strength, can stick to and climb walls, and can fire and swing from sticky webs. In ARC, we are finding out about God's superheroes of faith, ordinary people who put their trust in God and are able to do extraordinary things with God's help. Do you remember a few weeks ago, Shona told us about the fire trio? Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego had faith in God that was so strong they were willing to do what was right no matter what. They were thrown into a fiery furnace and trusted that God would protect them, and he did. Last week, Alex told us about Gideon, who God had chosen to help his people. Gideon had a small army of 300 men, but they were so strong and brave, and Gideon trusted God's plan to confuse the enemy, and God's people won. This week, our superhero is a young girl who loved God, who became queen and saved her people from being destroyed by an evil enemy. Her name was Esther. And I think she definitely fits into the category of a superhero. I'll tell you the story. Esther was a Jewish girl who didn't have the easiest start in life. Her parents had died and she was adopted by her cousin Mordecai. He raised her as his own daughter. He taught her about her place among God's chosen people, and she grew up to be a beautiful young woman who was kind and gracious. Mordecai and Esther lived in the land of Persia. They lived near King Xerxes' palace, and Esther caught the attention of the king's helpers because the king of Persia needed a new queen. They thought that Esther would make a good wife for the king, but she was in competition with many other girls because whoever became the king's wife also became queen. As soon as King Xerxes saw Esther, he fell in love with her. The king liked Esther more than anyone else, so he put a royal crown on her head and made her the queen of the Persian Empire. But there is a rather nasty man in this story whose name was Haman. He was one of the king's chief helpers who liked being very important. He did not like the Jewish people, particularly Mordecai. Haman came up with a wicked plan to destroy all of the Jewish people, who were also Esther's people. And God's people were in great danger. But the king did not know Esther was Jewish. What was Esther to do? No one could approach the king to try to help them, except for Esther. She was very afraid because even as queen, she could not go and see the king without a special invitation. Esther did not want her people to be destroyed, but she was afraid that if she asked the king to stop Haman's plan, she would be killed. And if she did not ask the king to spare her people, they would all be killed, including her cousin Mordecai. Esther had a plan. Esther told the Jewish people to fast and pray for 3 days. Esther Mordecai and her servants prayed and didn't eat or drink anything for 3 days also. And then she said she would go to the king and ask him to save her people, even though she knew she would be very afraid. Esther was a very brave queen and loved God and her people very much. Thankfully, her courage was rewarded, because when Esther told the king about Haman's evil plan, he was furious and stopped her people from being killed. And he punished Haman, who hated God's people. He made Mordecai his new chief helper and told Queen Esther that he would make a new law to keep her people safe. Brave young Queen Esther had saved her people. Esther was in the right place at the right time, put there by God to save her people. A superhero of faith. When Esther's people were in trouble, she chose to stand up and be brave. Having faith in God like Esther means we can make choices to do what's right, even though we may feel afraid. We read in the Bible in Psalm 56 verse 3, "When I am afraid, I will trust in you." As we face lots of different problems and difficulties, we need to remember to put our trust in God, and He will help us to be brave, just like our superhero Esther. In your ARC pack for week 3, you will find a page with 4 pictures from the story of Esther. And you need to colour in the 4 pictures and then cut out along the dotted line. And then when you've done that, you need to stick the pictures in the correct order onto these 2 sheets. And then you'll have a little book which will look something like this. And you can use your book to retell the story of Esther to somebody at home and tell them about the young girl who became queen, who turned out to be one of the best superheroes ever. See you soon.